Hi everybody. I know that we were talking about doing a gauge swatch, but one thing we didn't discuss was how do you know when your tension is too tight? Ideally, you want to look at your ball band for your yarn. Each ball band will tell you the ideal gauge. So if you look right here, it tells you ideally over a 10 by 10 centimeter square or 4 by 4 inch square, you want approximately 30 m, that's German, I don't know the German word, but it would be stitches. The 42 is rows. It does translate the R for rows and whatever the German word is. So ideally for this particular yarn, you would want to knit 30 stitches and 42 rows over a 10 by 10 centimeter or 4 by 4 inch. So that's the ideal gauge that the manufacturer recommends. Myself, I prefer a slightly tighter fabric, but I've been knitting for many years and I understand why I like it that way. It's just because it gives a very nice firm fabric and it doesn't stretch as much, but that's my preference. This just happens to be Opal yarn. Pardon me, it's sideways, but we're not so much interested in this particular yarn, but how we determine what is a good tension on your machine. So here I'm set up and I've been knitting some more swatches, and at this particular tension it's fairly tight, but I can knit with my machine easily. I go around and I don't have any skip stitches. Everything is knitting nice. Nothing is riding up on the stitches. So this is a nice tight tension. Then what I've done is I've increased over here. It's a little difficult to see. I'll go around. I'm going to increase my tension and I'm going to increase it 1 full turn. And now we'll see how the machine wants to knit. Oops, I believe I went too low. Let's go up again. Oh, look what's happened here. Right here, my stitches are rising. Do you see how the fabric, the yarn, is rising with the needles? That is a huge indication that your stitches are too tight. You could grab the weight and pull it down. I already have 3 weights. I've got my base weight and 2 others. I like to knit with all 3. But to knit at this tension, it's too tight. You can really see over here how the yarn is rising and I have to push it down. So that is too tight of a tension. Now if you really look over here, you will see I have a couple of skipped stitches. This tension is too tight. So you could go down half a turn and to see if that would remedy it. Now everything is just tight, so I have to get around a couple of turns. I'm pulling on my weights at the bottom to get around and to see what happens. So if you look, I still have some stitches that are rising. I've got a lot of skipped stitches. It is not happy at this tension. So what, oops, I got my ring caught. That happens to me. Oops, there we go, on caught. So now I will lower it. I'm going to go half a turn lower and we'll see what that does. You can see I've got a real big mess here. I'm just going to tuck that yarn inside out of the way so we can get around to see. So now that I'm knitting, I'm still getting some stitches up there. Not liking this tension. So let's go down another turn. I'm going to go half a turn this time and we'll see what we get. Right away, it's easier to crank. It feels better. And if I look carefully, I'm not getting those rising stitches. Everything is staying nice and smooth and down. This is a good tension. The other ones were too tight. I'm going to run into problems down the road. The other thing you want to do is when you think you've got the tightest tension you can get with that particular yarn, you back it down a turn, which is what we did, so that's where we are now. You want to engage your heel spring. So way up here, I have my heel spring, and I'm going to engage it. The reason I also want to check my tension with the heel spring engaged is because your heel spring will add more tension to your yarn. When you pull that yarn tight and have more tension, it's going to make your stitches tighter. In my experience, I find adding the heel spring adds 1 extra row per inch of tension. So I'm going to go around with my heel spring engaged, and I do not have any stitches raising. They're a little tight over here. I can see when I crank around slowly that they're not dropping immediately, but they are dropping. I'll show that to you over here. So as I knit, they're raising slightly. You can see right here on the needles, but it's going down pretty quick. Now that is with my heel spring engaged. That tells me I can knit at this tension, but with the heel spring engaged, it's going to be pretty close to the maximum. This is as tight as I would want to knit with that yarn. I would, if I really want a tight fabric for some reason, I want to have a nice tight leg, the tightest foot I can get. Say this is the only cylinder I have and I want to make the smallest sock possible, I would want a tighter tension. This is the tightest tension I would dare knit at with this particular yarn. Once you understand that, you can make all your notes for all your adjustments, but do be careful knitting your heel with the heel spring engaged. It's a little bit snug, but it should work as long as you don't go too quickly. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that helps you to understand the difference the tension makes on the fabric.